Hello, everybody. Hey, how we doing? Sorry for the delay. I had the perfect storm of technical issues. First one was server related, and the next one was the main video streaming PC decided to forget what the MIDI controller was, so I had a sudden rush to reinstall all the. It was the Nano Control 2. For some reason, it just decided it didn't have one connected, even though it did have one connected. So I had to uninstall it and reinstall it, which finally fixed it. So, hi Ken in the chat rooms. Ken Flux Pierce, always got something to talk with to me later. Good stuffs. Okay, I wonder what that is. Maybe it's fishing related. Maybe it's not. Hi everybody. So we've got Lego Steve B for Portland, Oregon. Mike Vicar Maninen from Finland. Ken Flux Pierce from Delaware. Mark Schoen from Michigan. Right, okay, so a bunch of people. So glad to hear it. Anyway, that's one thing I was going to do before I'm just going to go off and change briefly because we had a clear up at Sonic Towers and we unearthed all kinds of goodies. So how about this then? That is a pristine vintage Synthsite t-shirt, which would have been, I don't know, that's original site design. That must have been 90s, in the 90s. So that's got to be at least 20 years old. Only the one though, and I'm wearing it. We might have a couple more sitting around, but extremely, extremely nice to see that. The world's largest synthesizer. What does it say? The world's greatest synth resource, which it may well have been back then. I don't know if it still is. I mean, strictly speaking, because back then it was a big database. So I'm guessing could have been something that's now been superseded to a degree. Or at least challenged, shall we say. Yeah, okay. All right, I'm just trying to get my cables out of the way so I can. There we are. It's a bit tight around the neck. Needs a little bit of loosening, I would say, but I'll reveal that a bit later. So I'm terribly sorry about last week's show. Literally, it was just a very slow news week, and everybody just was not available, and it was going to be a real struggle to get anybody on. So I took the decision to drop it for that week, which I know is very unprofessional, but I wonder how that would be in terms of an unprofessional broadcast where it's just me wittering on for an hour with nothing to say. So I figured I'd take that decision. But we're back this week. We are in fact away next week because we're going to a product launch in London, which is a brand new synth. I can't say any more, so I'm quite excited about that. But we will have a special. We've got something lined up to play here. We've got. It's the interview I did with Imogen Heap, so that should be a real treat. It's around 40 minutes, so we'll publish that in place of the live stream. So I do hope you enjoy that. Anyway, so what else is going on? Yeah, I think I can safely say there are a few new synths coming this autumn. We know about the Udo, don't we? The Udo Audio Super 6, I think it is. That's one of them, and I can think of at least 2 others. That's all I'm saying. Right. So I hope you enjoyed the peak review. I think that did okay. Actually, I could probably put that in here, couldn't I? Let's have a look. Change that. Have I got peak? I got a peak review. Browse. We haven't got. It's going to be on this drive here. Starting to fill them up. Summit. Renders. Summit Master. Summit. Oh God, which one is it? Master, probably. I'm guilty of doing the final 2 Master. So that would be this one.
Hello and welcome to another Sonic.
Yeah, there we go.
Today we're looking at the brand new synthesizer.
I must admit, I thought this was a pretty good synth, if I'm honest.
Is a kind of moving on, or as a doubling.
We can watch it together.
Peak technology, which I reviewed.
I should have done a fishing show. Well, that's a good point here, Monkey. Jim, even. I think there's Jim there, Ear Monkey Music. I could have done a fishing video last week. I'd have had to go fishing, and I think the weather was crappy.
Hello,
so
and welcome to another Sonic Lab. Today
let's fast that forward a bit.
And that's what they've done. The Oscar, literally an FP. Actually, got the same filter.
I think I'm actually going to play something in it.
Up to 8 voices. Got two complete synthesizers either side of the split with up to 8 voices or more on each.
That's a bit meta, isn't it? Me watching myself.
Still between them, but when you've got one layer only, you're in just single mode, you can use up to 16 voices. So a big change. Obviously, yeah, we've got the extra keyboard. Means we've got
and we've tweaked our setup a little bit. So the lighting's a bit stronger, and I've introduced a GoPro for a bit of handheld close-up action.
As well as
they're great little cameras.
Play some notes. You can see how many voices I'm using on either layer. I've got the ability to control each layer individually. So on the A layer, the animate buttons and the hold, which will make them latch, and the pitch and the mod wheel change to blue. If I go to B, it changes to orange. So it's actually quite a clear delineation between the two things. I'm also able, and we've got separate animate for each layer. I can press both, and then the pitch and mod wheel will work for both, and then all of the
so I can find some other sounds. I particularly like the sine wave into the effects.
Release there. Go to add some elephant. Go C. Additionally, we've got the ability to dial in FM.
Oh, no, that's not it. See if I can find it. Oh, this is the one. I like this patch. It's really effective. A single oscillator. Just a single oscillator and a reverb modulation.
Another nice feature is the ability to add effects modulation. There are 4 mod slots, and in this patch what I'm doing is I'm modulating with LFO3 to the reverb level, which creates this sort of rather lovely kind of spatial pan. But it's really, if I take the effects off, it's just a sine wave, single oscillator sine wave with a tiny bit of mod. But if we come back over to here, we can also see another addition, and this is they're a global. We've got, as well as the initial LFOs, which have their various ranges, we've also got global LFOs, which are they're single, so we haven't got one per voice, they're just global. There's 3 and 4, and we've got access to those on the front panel, and that means we got, again, easy tweaking. So this sound is just, take it out of, but I've also got on this one, right here in the mod effects, I've just got mod wheel to oscillator shape, just taking it, just changing the tone. No filtering going on here or anything. And that ability to modulate the effects brings them into the sort of, because a lot of synths have that ability. We've got the Rev 2, you can modulate certain effects parameters. Also with the DeepMind, we can do that. In Summit, we can modulate distortion level, chorus rate, chorus depth, chorus feedback, delay, level, time, feedback, reverb level, reverb time, reverb low pass and high pass filters. So enough to get some extra movement. And like I say, this is a very simple patch. I go back to my reverb level. And it sounds lovely. So now let's talk about unison. I've got a patch here which is just using the arpeggiator with key latch mode. I've got a single oscillator. So now I'm in mono mode, I can go into poly mode. I can bring up 3 oscillators. I've got one on sine for a bit of weight and one on pulse width.
Ah, here we go. 48, I think this is.
So then, how far can we go? So we can go a lot further because there are a number of ways. We can go into mono mode, then we can go into the voice mode, and we can get into unison. So we can go up to watch the level here, up to 8, and then we can detune. But we can also spread them out in stereo, which is quite effective when called. But there's more. We can go into the oscillator. Let's have a look where it is.
Hi, Nick.
And we've got diverge and drift, so we can add even more.
Oh, it's 5-2. Right, that'll do with that. Hey, Gaz. Yeah, we got Gaz. Excellent.
Hey, hi.
How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Picture and sound okay?
Yes, fine. And we got a 2. I had I'm sorry about that. I was those late links going out. Honestly, it was literally the server decided to go down just before while I was setting up for this, so I couldn't bring up the news stories. And then the Korg, the Nano Control, decided to be not recognised by the Windows PC switching software, so there was no switching. Which was so it was a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, I don't know what happened there. And it was just a question of deinstalling the driver and reinstalling it, and phew, that was all right. But that was about 22. So yeah, one of those scenarios. But yeah, it's all good. The levels. Let me just 1 2 1 2. Let's get my levels. I need a bit more of me, a bit more of you. So you. Oh, did you do the firmware?
I did.
Oh, okay. We can talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about that.
So
Thank God we got a topic.
Topic.
Oh, look what I found.
What? Oh my goodness! What
year is original that from? 90? I reckon that's 94, 95, maybe 96.
Vintage. Wow.
Yeah. Brand new bagged. It was.
Was it?
It was. Yeah. It was.
I don't even recognise that logo.
No, well, it was the original site design.
Wow.
Which is all Eurostyle font, and yeah, as you can see.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Brilliant.
Okay, right. Just the two of us this week, but that should be fine. Both Gaz and I know that we can together fill hours of dead space. It's really no problem.
Before.
We've done it before, and we will do it again. But it just goes to show, isn't it? It's weird. This summer, more so than any other one, I think there's been a sort of maybe that everybody's figured out their business plans and they're being disciplined and they're not releasing stuff as soon as they finish it. They go, no, we're going to wait till after the summer holidays. We'll have a holiday this year, and then people are touring. So it's just there's very little news and very little personnel available as well, just because people are working, which I guess is good, right? That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's typically very busy time for me, but I'm really glad I can be on today.
Me too, I can tell you.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, right. What's the time? We still got 3 minutes to kill. I wouldn't want to go early. That would feel somehow wrong. Oh, I can hear something coming back from somewhere. Is that me? I don't know what that is. It doesn't matter. We could fill it with some technical business if you want. Just fixing stuff. What else have I got here? Oh, I was very pleased. I've got because we've cleared out all the front foyer now of the office. It is now actually a foyer. It's almost completely
open space. So we're thinking about putting a couple of chairs in there and a table and having like a computer screen up there. And I got the Raspberry Pi working. So what it does is it just pulls videos in a loop from our recently rendered kind of releases and plays them. And then in between that, it flips between that and our Google Analytics real-time stats. And so we're going to have that on the wall like that to make us look really fancy and like a new media company.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. I like the sound of that. Yes. So, gosh. Well, what's the countdown? Oh, it is nearly showtime.
It's nearly showtime. Should we save it? We made it. We filled 3 minutes with almost nothing. So we haven't given anything away, which is important. Excellent.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, let's do a show. I think I can actually do this. Let me just move my phone out the way, and because we've got the Facebook thing going up this week as well. So, all right, stand by. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 587. I do apologise for not having a show last week, but as I was saying in the preamble of the show, if you watch us live, because we live stream generally from around 3:30, there's usually a bit of preamble beforehand. I was mentioning in the show that literally there was very little news and everybody was out of action and working and stuff, so there was just there wasn't anything to make a show with, so I do apologise, but that's just the way it goes next week. And I feel rather embarrassed to say that there will be no show next week, but that's because we're in London for a product launch, so we'll be back with good tidings, I hope, for all of you synth lovers. I'm not saying anything more, but in its place I do have an interview that I shot with Imogen Heap, which is about 40 minutes, which hopefully you'll just great. She's a great one for talking as well. You wouldn't have any trouble filling hours of time with her, because she's just sort of very energetic and full of things to say. So you can look out for that next week, because that will be placed in place of an actual live show, because we'll be in London and unable to do the show, but we should be back the week after. So that's all I can say for the moment. But yes, welcome. This is the podcast to do with music technology, synthesizers, industry stuff, software, controllers, all kinds of things, basically. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, stay tuned, and we'll be talking about that over the next hour or so with my guest, Gaz Williams, who I'll introduce in a second. And also, we've got a competition for if you want to win a copy of Isotope's Neutron 3, which is a fantastic sort of modern mixing tool. You put a plug-in across all of your tracks, or as many of your tracks if you want, and it can talk to itself and figure out what frequencies are overlapping and stuff. Really fascinating. So that's an advanced version of that, which is up for grabs. Competition will be about halfway through. So anyway, I want to say hello to my first and only guest, Gaz Williams, who's there in Bristol. Gaz, bass player, music technologist, amongst many other things. How are you, Gaz? You well?
Yeah, good, thank you. Glad to be here. I mean, there is a bit of a dearth of news, isn't there, this time of year, typically. So, but that doesn't mean that there's not loads to talk about.
There's no dearth of words.
No dearth of words.
Exactly. Well, yeah. It is. I mean, there is news, but some of it's kind of quite sort of similar. I mean, it's more general discussion stuff, which is maybe things that we've talked about before. So, one has to balance these things. We don't want to talk about the same things every week. We try not to anyway, but sometimes you just can't help it when there's when that's all there is. So maybe that's for the best. So what have you been up to then, Gaz?
Just come back from Green Man Festival. I was meant to be playing there, but actually ended up not playing, which was a bit of a weird thing, but that was okay, because I had a really good time there. And something I noticed at Green Man Festival is one of the big festivals on the UK festival circuit. Very much along the lines of Six Music, BBC Six Music, the radio station there. So lots of acts that you'd typically find on that station. It's ostensibly a folk-centered festival, but not really a folk festival, more of a modern folk. I don't know. I don't quite know how to define it, really. But something really occurred to me at this festival, and it was following on from a video that I'd seen on YouTube about the death of melody. I can't remember the name of the guy who's posted that video, but it's been a very popular video, which is talking about how melody is really out, is kind of out of fashion. And you think, how can melody be out of fashion? And the guy puts forward a very convincing case for it. Gosh, I wish I could remember. Maybe someone in the chat room can,
Inside the Score, it looks like.
That's it, Inside the Score. Thank you very much.
It's got a very interesting poster frame, which looks like let's have a look, see if I can find it. I'm trying to find the poster frame because it looks like a very sort of I can't see it now. Looks like we're got. Yeah. Oh, this is Honey, an advert for Honey, not an advert for Grammarly, which makes a change on YouTube. Let's see if I can find it. So
this channel has always focused on film music and classical music. That's always been my goal. But
anyway, yeah. So I haven't watched that, so I'm at your mercy. You'll have to praise it for us.
Okay, I mean, he talks about pop music, but he also talks about sort of how melody is how soundtracks have moved away from melodies and some classical music as well, some modern contemporary classical music, focusing on other aspects. He's talking about sort of tone, like tone, texture, and
atmosphere and mood.
But also within pop music, and he uses some examples where the melody is mostly just on a single note with just maybe very, very slight melodic variations of maybe one or two notes, and that kind of hooks don't necessarily need to be melodic. The hook could be even just like the lyric repeated in a single note, just repeated single notes. And I thought it was a really interesting, well put together video. I'd recommend watching it. It's good. So I went to Green Man Festival, which, as I was mentioning, is, like I nearly said ostensibly then, but I've been pulled out.
I didn't want to. Your ostensibly count is actually 2 for the show so far. So
yes, so I've used up all my ostensiblies. But yeah, so Green Man, has this what would be typically very melodic music at the festival, but virtually all the acts I saw did not rely on melody at all. I mean, the examples, I saw the band Idols on the Sunday night, which are a Bristol punk band who give an incredibly entertaining, high-energy show with pretty much everything going on other than melody. Then I saw a couple of young bands who were really promising, a band called Squid and another band called Black Country New Road, both really great bands, but kind of like with sort of shouted vocals with no discernible melodies within it at all. And then a couple of fantastic British, kind of from the British jazz scene, both featuring the saxophone player Shabaka Hutchins. The Comet is Coming and Sons of Kemet, both of which don't really deal in specifically melodies, although there's lots and lots of notes going on. The Comet is Coming.
I wonder why that is, though, Gaz. I mean, do you think? Sorry to butt in, but I have a theory about this. I mean, I think partly it's because certainly probably composers for picture are probably a bit sick of having their soundtracks turned down. So essentially, if you have a melody trying to break through, the dialogue will trump it, or the sound effects might trump it in most instances. So the opportunities to play a melody would only really be maybe at the beginning and the end, or there might be a theme point where you have it. But I mean, so that might be one thing. So people, well, why bother? Because it will just get crushed. And the other thing is, there are, as we know, it's harder to. A lot of music is an incidental byproduct to doing something else rather than sitting down and listening to it. So maybe those are two factors.
Yes, I'm sure. But it was just interesting though, seeing that these different bands were all, as I say, using other devices other than actually relying on melody particularly, and these bands were great. It wasn't that they were bad in any way, although I do kind of leave those gigs with a little bit of an empty feeling that there's not much to take away from in terms of songs that that particularly stand out. And and I think that melodies are the thing that sticks with you, aren't they? Really.
Well, they're hard. They're hard things to it's a hard thing to do well. Although, I mean, you also bear in mind, with pop music and sort of club music and those things, I mean, you tend to get a melody and it's just repeated and repeated and repeated, and not generally evolves much. But I don't see a problem with that, because there's some very, very catchy stuff. I mean, that's part of the thing that helps it get remembered, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe it is a bit of a taste thing. I do really love a very long melody, though, like a melody that might take, more than 16 bars, maybe up 32 bars to tell its whole melody. But upon repeated listens, that melody starts to reveal itself. And I really think that the true value in music, though, does kind of hinge on a great melody. Certainly songs, soundtracks is a different world, isn't it? Of course, and even dance music. If the purpose of the music is to dance to, then maybe that sort of more sophisticated approach to melody doesn't necessarily fit into that kind of thing. But still, it was I thought it was interesting because it did back up that video really. But just on one note though, I have to say, though, that the Comet is coming. We played a gig with them a couple of years ago with Asteroid Deluxe, but seeing the Comet is coming on the Far Out stage was my highlight, partly because the keyboard player, his name is Danalog, and he plays...
what an awesome...
I can't be honest, he is maybe now my favourite current synth player. He plays a Juno, and he plays... Well, he mostly with the Juno, he's mostly, I think, just using it with a sustain pedal, but all the action takes place on a Roland SH-09 of all things. And the guy is astonishing with it. The things he does with it is mind-blowing. And he uses...
I bet they sound good as well, yeah.
They do.
SH-09 is a...
SH-09, yeah. What's that? Single oscillator, very simple.
Oh, yeah, but it's got the beefiest of beefy oscillators. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's a fantastic... I think it's got a sub-oscillator, I think, if I remember correctly, but it's massively weighty.
But where he really shines with this thing, though, is that he can play it almost like a guitarist would, sort of like a guitarist could contort and whammy bar and do all this kind of stuff. He's like using all the controls in a very sort of performative way, like using octave switching, sort of very performant, but also various other kind of parameters. And not just simply doing kind of filter. Yeah. And I think he had it going into a little Boss DD something, little, single stomp box. And I think this is a big part of why they sound good is he's got it going into an Ampeg SVT 8 with an 8x10 cab.
Jesus.
And a big valve head. Yeah. And he's really hitting that quite hard as well. So it's got quite a dirty sound to it
and presumably not too piercing, because that's going to cut down. Is that just the SH-09 that goes into the bass amp, or is it the Juno as well? Because the Juno would be stereo, wouldn't it, I think?
Yeah, I couldn't tell, to be honest. But I mean, because as I say, most of the stuff that he does is just on this mono synth. And that really kind of interested me, just in how he was using the mono synth in this such a creative way. So it's just a three-piece band. There's a drummer and there's a guy, I'd say Shabaka, fantastic saxophone player. Shabaka has this particular style where he's always pushing the beat up.
Interesting.
And the music is just so... I mean, it's just this three-piece.
I'm just trying... The reason that came up was just I'm trying to find a video clip just so we've got some sort of concept.
Yeah. But, he did this little solo piece on the mono synth. And
there we go.
Honestly, I've never heard anyone do anything like it. That's them. That's Danalog. There's Shabaka. Yeah.
Did he used to be in the 1976 or something as well? Or Soccer? Because I've seen somebody else with a Juno.
Yes, Soccer. That's him. It's Soccer.
There we go.
Yes. I can't remember the title. Yes, it was. That I think.
Soccer something at 60. Oh, here we go.
Come on,
that's
bring it on.
very free, isn't it? Yeah, I like the sound of that. That's going to be. I bet that's great to see live, perhaps more than recorded, though. Yeah.
Oh no, it sounds great on recording as well. Their records are fantastic. I think their first album was Mercury Prize nominated. It does make for a great listen as well. But out through a massive rig at a festival where it's really banging. It's just, oh man, I was literally floored by that show. It was amazing. Excellent. And prior to that, my previous highlight was I'd just seen Stereolab, which was a 25-year ambition of mine. I've loved them for such a long time and never seen them live. And that was great too. Because of course, Stereolab were using all sorts of interesting vintage synthesizers and keyboards and organs and things, weren't they? That was a big part of their sound. They were really modeled on that French futurist pop sort of sound.
Are they Welsh, Stereolab?
No. There's I think it's it's a French, British, English kind of. The singer Letitia Sadler is French, and Tim, what's his name? He's the guitarist, main guy. He's English guy, but they very unique sound, Stereolab. But as I say, they were using lots of vintage synths and things which were really out of fashion. Things like in the early 90s, string synths and stuff like that, which really
were they part of the Philips Philocordia revival? That sounds quite possible. I'm just about to bring this up. This is them as well. Let's have a look. What's he got there? OB6. That looks like a reface and a rose.
Reface YC, yeah. And
right, hold on a sec. I have to turn it off. Gosh, that was a bit epic. Yeah, sorry about that.
Fantastic though. So I mean, for live they're using kind of reliable modern stuff, but their studio recordings were typically full of vintage instruments of some really interesting stuff there. But it's quite interesting because they were pursuing a particular thing that was just completely on its own, really, in terms of not belonging to any movement or scene particularly. Lots of elements of krautrock and various other things, but I particularly loved it at the gig though, because I just felt it was like I don't know, like, and I mean this in a completely clean way, adult entertainment.
Right, I see what you mean. There was right. Yeah,
sophisticated, modern, with great texture and brilliant, really, really great. So it was my two highlights. But the Comet is coming. Honestly, you've got to see them. Oh no, there is one more I'd like to mention though, because and that is so Shabaka plays in this other band called Sons of Kemet, which again, very peculiar lineup. They were one saxophone, two drummers, and a tuba player. So the tuba player, I wish I could remember his name. He was doing like all the kind of handling all the bass end stuff, but one incredible tuba player. He'd be dancing the whole gig as well and doing all this again, a bit like Shabaka, a lot of really kind of sort of staccato fast lines on a tuba.
Was he playing it into Trace Elliott?
I don't know. But one thing that happened that I thought was really funny though, at one point during the gig, everybody else left the stage except for the tuba player, who just did this like 5-minute amazing tuba solo. And it was a capacity crowd. It was on the main stage, loads of people there. And I was thinking to myself, I bet that right now this is the biggest audience for a solo tuba in the world.
And probably not only right now. I'd imagine pretty much since their last gig.
But again, just he was using that tuba in ways I just couldn't even fathom. Just incredible, really. So again, another band really well worth checking out. Just totally redefining what you'd expect from a band, I suppose. The lineup being
the instrumentation just being unusual, something that you've not seen before. So that's
But,
right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, I didn't make it to any. I was painting this weekend, pretty much. Painting a ceiling, which is, if I've got any paint on the top of my head that I haven't spotted, that's probably why. A couple of ceilings. Yeah, well, I'm glad it was good. And because the other thing that happened this weekend, it was just sort of really awful weather. So you managed to escape that, fortunately, just one day of terrible torrential rain.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, well let's get on. I know I was going to play this last show, but I didn't get the opportunity, so I'm going to. I think it's this one. So check this out. And what I really like about this is it's just a noise synth, but he's using it as the soundtrack to. This is obviously Titanic, which I'm sure we get busted for. But I just thought I've never seen a synth like I've never seen one used like this. I've never considered for that sort of sound effects kind of really. I mean, it sounds like a dying ocean liner at the moment.
Isn't it processing My Heart Will Go On?
I don't know if it is or not. I think they just put that in. I watched it for ages. It is. I mean, the low end and the stuff is astonishing. Let me see if I can find. This was actually the what was it? It's the XL3 Shard, which is a sort of noise synth that I can't quite figure out whether it's a DIY or you've just got opportunities to modify it yourself. But it's just it's quite an interesting concept, and it's like 300 quid, so it's quite specialised. But it's just that I never really figured out the whole, the noise synth doesn't really. I mean, though to be fair, I suppose I have got a Lyra 8, which is fairly noisy, but it's kind of chordally noisy, and it can be very beautiful as well. I don't get the sense this was so beautiful, but I'd never really thought of using a synth like that for those kind of things, and it sort of makes quite a lot of sense for this sort of visceral, floor shaking kind of sound effects generation as well. I just thought, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and do we know how much it is? Because it does look
300 quid. It's not terribly cheap, but it's specialised. I think, as we say, boutique and specialised.
Oh, but it is funny though when you do delve into just pure noise, and it can have a really sort of magical effect. I mean, it's not always the nicest thing for other people to listen to, but just exploring it and just. But there is a beauty within noise, though, isn't there? There is something quite
sometimes.
Sometimes.
I think if there is some, at least some harmonic intervals that make a certain amount of sense, it can work like that. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, you were talking about this kind of more evolving melody, and I do remember Joe Zawinul, very, very famously, some of his stuff, later Weather Report stuff and solo stuff, he would create these amazing lines and chord lines which had the really bizarre harmonic intervals and almost really atonal stuff, but it sort of became, as your ear tuned into it and the other stuff was fitted around it, it really started to make sense, whereas on its own it can be a bit grating. But he was very good at that. I wish I could think of some examples, but I suppose there are times when it can work, but that's the only one I could think of.
Well, I suppose talking about melody, part of the thing about melody is it has like a narrative to it, like a melody. And so you could with noise, if you are shaping the noise with some sense of narrative, if that makes kind of sense.
Like to picture or to, yeah. It's probably easier to do to picture than it is to just something else.
Well, yeah, it gives it some context, doesn't it? But yeah, I do. I've been enjoying the Electron analog heat, and really, with it on its kind of nastiest sort of settings. I think a big part of noise though is the filtering, isn't it? Filtering the noise, and sort of maybe that is as much of part of the the
you can pluck out the harmonics and filter it down.
Yeah. So I suppose the filter can make extract music out of the noise, I suppose, with a bit of resonance. And but yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a number of times, really, how just sometimes just making noise just for the sake of noise, not for any other purpose other than just the therapy of noise manipulation.
It's like sort of chopping wood or digging a hole or running up a hill or something. It's got the same sort of therapeutic qualities, right?
Yeah, definitely. Here's a question: pink or white noise? What would be your choice?
I suppose for flexibility, I'd probably go for white because I could always filter it, whereas pink is more fully.
Pink
is like it's like an EQ curve. I do remember we had a discussion about this in the past because there are so many different. There's brown, pink, blue, purple. In fact, doesn't the Matrix Brute have several different flavors of noise. It's got all these unusual flavors, like 3 or 4, I think it is. I can't remember now, and they all have a very different quality. And that sort of works. I mean, I suppose that makes sense. And I remember when we did a piece with Alessandro Cortini when we went to his place after NAMM, and he showed us this beautiful. It works very well on those those fixed filter banks, and he was creating these amazing sort of. They were like Eraserhead background noises, which I suppose is similar to what we just heard there, but a bit more finessed. And they were just by using these filter banks, by really picking out these high Q harmonics from just a straight noise, and it can almost sound vowel-like, and you get the sense that there is a shape. Certainly in Eraserhead, you got the sense that there were pipes of different dimensions with things going through them that those harmonics suggested, and it really made for a very strong atmosphere. Because when it's been a very long time since I've seen Eraserhead. It's of course David Lynch is one of David Lynch's early art films. But it's got there's lots of stark rooms with pipes running through them, and I think that's hence the way that worked. I don't know what was used in that. I'd be interested to know.
The Dreadbox Abyss has got quite an interesting noise element in it, in that you've got this kind of variable waveform that sort of goes through various like pulse widths to sawtooth over eventually into noise, and then you can modulate that waveform so it'll dip into the noise, and the depth depends on how much into the noise it'll go, and or you can just have it so you just got like a little hint of noise if you want to kind of get like a kind of breathy or sort of some sort of texture. But like when you start playing with the LFO and having it going into the noise, it feels like it's like the danger zone, and you can get it just right and get the rhythm really nice, just sort of dipping into the noise. I think that's a really, really cool way, rather than noise being like a separate element, with it being part of
well, in introduction, I mean, I think we probably discussed noise and randomness in synthesis is something that is a whole area of topics we could probably spend all afternoon talking about. I hold that thought, and we may as well do the let's do our little piece from let's have a word from our friends over at Isotope.
Presenting Neutron 3, the modern way to mix. Bring your workflow into the 21st century with 8 modern mixing tools, all at your fingertips in one mothership plugin. Starting a mix can take a while, but with the all-new Mix Assistant, Neutron can listen to your audio and quickly suggest a custom starting point for an individual track, or set levels for your entire mix. Shape sounds like never before with the new Sculptor module. Match audio to a target sonic profile and instantly sculpt it to sound more like itself or like something else completely. Reach out and touch your audio with Neutron's immersive controls and visualizations. Neutron 3 comes equipped with Visual Mixer, a tool to help you effortlessly manipulate the landscape of your mix. Neutron 3, the modern way to mix.
And of course, if you want to try that out, you can head over to isotope.com, sign up for an account, and you get access to, I think it's a free 10-day demo for that. But they are rather, giving away a copy of Neutron 3. And and it's advanced, which means I don't know what the difference between advanced and standard is. I think maybe you get a better meter. I'm going to stop there because I probably don't know, and I'll only make it worse. Let's see. So we've got a competition. So we're looking for the hashtag. Now, this is a bit complicated to read out. 21st century mixes. 21 ST, 21st century mixes as one word, and the hashtag Neutron3 as the other word. So tweet those, because it's a Twitter competition, to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. So what we do is we pick out we take a random number from the number of entries, and then we count down the number of random number, and then we pick the entry that wins. So it's truly, I mean, I wouldn't say it was kind of totally scientific, but it's about as random as we can manage without getting involved in sort of deeper mathematics. But anyway, we wanted to say we have a winner for last week. Last week we've got somebody called, I don't know what they called. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this. Daiku1. And they tweeted, not last week, last competition, former software guy that loves fine furniture building. That sounds interesting. Latest production, of course, Sonicstate. So if you want to get in touch at Daiku1, then you are this last week's winner, last show's winner of Neutron 3, and congratulations. Let's have a look here. One voice Deckard. Where should we go next? I think we'll go. Yeah, let's have a look at that. Did I get this? Yeah. So this is the news that Black Corporation, who made the Deckard's Dream, and so they've got the a kind of rack version of the CS80 sort of voice machine. Not necessarily the hardware. They're bringing out Deckard's Voice, which is a single CS80 voice style voice in Eurorack, and it's only a couple of $100, and they're doing. They're going to be doing pre-orders at the moment, so I guess they will be ramping up for bigger amount of sales. And they've also got Deckard's Dream pre-order 199, and then there was also the Rachel, because a lot of people were saying that. Let me see if I've got to open this one as well, because I didn't have this window ready. A lot of people were saying that it's nothing without the ring mod, and there's very little actually information about the module Rachel, which is the Vangelis inspired modulator. But it's interesting, isn't it? How and we talked about this before. How the thought of having something of the largesse of a CS80, this kind of legendarily unaffordable synthesizer that's also actually kind of hard to own, just purely because it's so finicky. The thought of that, the brand of it is so strong that people will buy bits of it, even though the bit of it has sort of almost nothing to do with the physical nature of the actual instrument itself, like the poly aftertouch, the physicality of the keyboard and the touch strip and all of those things. It's interesting. I think it'll do well, despite the fact that it's not actually, the CS80.
But it's also funny how, like, the impact of Blade Runner as a cultural icon can give this Deckard's Dream, and now it's called Rachel. Just I can't think of any other maybe film that has quite such a I don't think so. In the synth world, that holds just such a strong appeal that you could name modules after it. But yeah, I mean, it looks good, doesn't it? I mean, I think all of the Black Corporation stuff has a lot of intrigue about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just play? I got that totally wrong. 199 is the deposit for Deckard's Voice. The actual full thing is 699. So you pay 199 now, and then presumably you put the 399 on the delivery. So I do beg your pardon. Before you rush out and max out your credit card. It's not 199. It's 699. I do beg your pardon.
Wow, 699. That I mean, how much is the Deckard's Dream though? I mean, and that's 8 voices.
It's about $4,000, something like that. Let's have a look.
Okay, so I suppose when you start adding it all up, with a Deckard's Dream though, because I haven't actually had to go with one. How much of the CS80 is in that then of the Deckard's Dream, or I mean, because we're talking about like the oscillators and the filters and the ring mod, and as you mentioned,
that's a good question.
Yeah,
I'm as well as using technology today, and in the near future, you'll be able to play Deckard's Dream with a stunning expressive control. It's Kimji.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's a good question. 16 VCOs, polyphonic aftertouch, and sorry, I've switched to this.
Okay, it's got the poly aftertouch then.
Analog and DSP effects built in as well. Video reviews. The Kimji review, the synth I've been reviewing. Oh, I wonder who got to review that.
Ricky Tinez.
First you say yes, then you...
Oh, Ricky Tino. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's been making some good video content, I think.
Oh no, that's something else. That's the Kimji, which is the that's the Kimji, which is the RSF Cobol, which is a really interesting synth as well. Actually, I remember. I'm trying to think who it was now. They did a fantastic emulation of it, Poly Cobol, and I'm trying to remember who it was. The thing that was really good about it was the morphing between the waveforms was just astonishing. What's it called? Poly Cobol. Gosh, my memory's. It was years ago. I did software, Polycobol. Who was it? Zill's Lab, that's right, Zill's Lab.
Zill's Lab,
That's
yes.
that was a great, and I remember for the time that was an amazing sounding synth in software. It was one of those synths that kind of raised the bar for other software synths to try and incorporate. So it was one of those things that helped increase the quality of general quality of those synths. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm tangentializing here. At least it's on the synth subject, I suppose.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so they're based. I think are they based in Tokyo? Black Corporation.
I think they might be. They might be.
Actually, I think there's a couple of American guys in the company as well, but I think they are based. Yeah, I think they're based in Tokyo, and they like to party. That's for sure.
Well, that's interesting because we hopefully are going to be going to Tokyo quite soon, so maybe we'll get a chance to meet them. That would be interesting.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I would like some time off. I mean, as we a lot. Okay. Right. So anyway, that's the one voice Deckard, which is Deckard's voice, and the Rachel, which will be coming along at some time in the soon history of it. So let's have a look. Should we do this? Should we do? Did you see the? I'm trying to look for it. This was a video that was recently posted from ContinueCon, and this was Geert Bevan talking about the history of alternative controllers, and he's got the Eigenlab stuff there. He's got a Pico and the Eigenharp. Is that the Alpha? There was another one which is even bigger. And he just sort of talks about the whole way that it's become. It's evolved, this kind of polyphonic expression, obviously the instrument, and he's a really big exponent of that kind of stuff. I mean, without him, I think MPE probably wouldn't have got as far as it had. Interesting watch.
No,
I mean,
definitely. And Geert's now a full-time employee of Moog Music now, which I think is a smart move because he's been on the show, hasn't he? He's a super nice and super smart guy, and it's interesting because he was an early proponent of the Eigenharp, which I was remembering back about that, the idea of the Eigenharp when it first came out, because it's like it's got all these keys which are which can do up and down, left and right, and pressure. And very, very, very sensitive to the touch too. So in many ways, it was a forerunner, really, I guess, to things like the Instrument and the Seaboard, although albeit in a very different format. But one of the things about the Eigenharp, though, gosh, which must have been really, really hard for people to do, is you could build synth voices on the fly. You could kind of create an envelope, but you'd have to learn strange.
Yeah, it was so I had the Pico to review, and it was one of those things that every time you touched it, it just went completely haywire because they didn't do any rounding on the parameters, and then you couldn't adjust the sensitivity very well, and they just weren't. Yeah, it was very difficult.
It was a shame. I had a Pico too, but it was just really hard to make music on it. Although, that had like the touch strip on there, and it also had the pipes. So you could do breath control, or you could do bowing with the, with this like kind of touch strip, and I could get some quite nice kind of cello kind of action on it, but it was just ultimately just a little bit too hard to play. And however, this is how I first became aware of Geert, and then sort of following him from there on. And he was the guy who I think he wrote the firmware for the Instrument. So he's heavily involved with Roger Lynn on the Instrument, and then so he, I guess, is probably the most qualified person to talk on this matter, I suppose. That's a good feature to watch, though, because he goes into quite deep, good detail about
what's
this.
really interesting about this, though, is because the Alpha Labs, the Eigenlabs rather. They went early, and I remember going to Music Messe, and in many ways there were similar parallels between them and Rowley, because they got the guy. I forget the story. There was a backstory behind it. The guy basically sold a company for millions, and this was just something he wanted to do. So he hired lots of bright young things, and literally we went to Music Messe, and he had his booth. It was a massive booth, must have cost a fortune, with loads of people on it, and there were loads of people working for it. and it was kind of, so it was quite similar to Rolly, except it was in nowhere nearly successful. So unfortunately it just didn't take on, because there was that whole thing about it looking a bit like you're in the Star Wars band, and it was a bit of a, it just didn't quite, it didn't look very cool playing it, I suppose. You stuck out in sort of the wrong way. And so
I'd have worn my cape though. I think if I had one, I'd worn my cape and gone for it to I think you have to own that sort of stuff.
It does, but it's a bit, isn't it a bit like rocking out with an oboe? It just those
What's wrong
things,
with that?
Well, or a bassoon, perhaps.
Yeah, come on, you could rock on a bassoon.
Okay.
I reserve the right. If I could play the bassoon, I'd reserve the right to rock out on it.
You probably could play the bassoon more easily than you could an organ harp. Yeah, that's the sad truth of it. It was just.
Are they no longer?
No, I've got the website here. Look, the website's here. It's rather Eigen Lab's here, but rather unfortunately, the first thing you see is why buy an organ harp, which is a question that's kind of rhetorical, isn't it? I suppose, given what we've been talking about, it's a bit unfair. Yeah. It was.
Beautiful looking things, or the finish on it, and
oh yeah, it was really a nice thing of real. It was beautifully made, and it was very expensive, but it was I would agree, but it was one of those, as Rich Hilton so often says, future doorstop of the future, or future doorstop.
Oh dear.
So yeah, there is there. I think we have a Pico somewhere, or we had a Pico. I wonder what happened to that. I haven't seen it for ages. Maybe it got lent, and that was that. I think I might have lent it to Lee. Oh, I can't remember now. Might have gone to Lee Kemp, actually. Happy birthday, Lee, by the way, for a couple of days ago.
Oh, happy birthday, Lee, yeah.
Okay, right. Well, there's that. What else have we got here? We've done history controllers. We've done that one. There are other topics, but... Oh, yeah. Did you see the... yep, go on.
Sorry, I was only saying because we had that other, the key step thing as well.
Oh yes, because we haven't got that in there. The key step, as we know, has become, it's kind of like it's essential kit for modular or laptop performance, because it's so small. I mean, it's really it's perfect. I don't know how many men must have sold it. It must be. I would venture it's the highest selling controller keyboard of all time, and that's a guess. I mean, I don't know that. I would guess that.
I've described it in the past as like almost like the Stratocaster of MIDI controllers, because it's ubiquitous and also very, very versatile. And some people are like, oh, there's no control knobs on there other than the three knobs there. So, as a controller, it kind of lacks that side of things, but makes up for it with its really brilliant sequencer or fun sequencer. And now version 2 firmware has made the sequencer much more useful, namely in that the way you'd have to create a sequence in the past was if you wanted to create like an empty 16 bar. I think we've done this in the past, haven't we, Nick, with something. So you'd have to go into the record mode without it in play mode and just tap in 16 times to create a 60 to create an. Now you hold down shift, and then the numbers which kind of indicate which MIDI channel it is, if you hold down shift and then hit it, that's a way that you can quickly sort of set up how long you want the sequence to be. And that means you can also do that in a performative way as well, that you can kind of have your sequence running and then just shorten it and lengthen it and that sort of thing, which is a pretty big deal if you're a key step user. So I think that's pretty cool. I did have real trouble doing the update though. Arturia suggested that if you're doing it on a Mac, that is, trashing all the MIDI in the audio MIDI settings in the MIDI page, but that didn't work for me. What worked for me, just in case anyone else has this problem, was just disconnecting every single thing from the computer other than the keyboard and the monitor. And then it allowed me to update that. So just if anyone has any trouble, then it's a bit of a pain. But
the thing, I find that I use the key step a lot for demoing stuff, for little desktop things, because the way that the shot is set up there. If you've got like a really big long keyboard and then a module, because you can get a module in at sort of 16:9. So I try and get the keyboard in so that the whole thing fits in essentially the ratio of this window. Otherwise, it's like a massive keyboard at the bottom with a tiny module at the top, which looks wrong. But the thing I find with the sequencer, and it's really frustrating, is I think what I want is this feel, and you can't get it because you've got to figure out
what the divisions need to be to get that kind of little push or little skip. And I just can't, my mind just can't work that way. And I spent ages trying to figure out how to then subdivide it up. What would be really handy to me is if you could start with a 16 step and then sort of expand it out so that it suddenly then became 32 or 48, but with the same timing, so that the steps, that the intervals just got smaller. So that you could then throw in a little bit of a hey that's off the beat or whatever, because I find that really difficult. If you want to get anything that's not straight and doesn't involve just a swing, it's really difficult to do. And also you have to kind of almost have to put a note in at the beginning, because you never know where one is because there's no real indicator. So it takes a bit of a knack, in my opinion.
Yeah. Although I do quite love losing the one and just having it, just having it being totally disorientated from that point of view. What was I going to say though? A couple of keys have gone dead on my one though. So if anyone knows how to fix it, I opened it up and tried to clean the contacts, but still,
because you throw it about so much
around. That might help. What else was I going to say though? But yeah, I mean, 32 keys makes a big difference compared to the like a typical smaller keyboard with 25 keys. And, Native Instruments have kind of copied that form a little bit with their M32, their mini keyboard. But Aftertouch as well on a little sub-100
and MIDI,
keyboard.
let's not forget MIDI CV
cool.
gate. That's something that's important as well. And that's the reason why you get loads of modular people using it, because it's just,
and also, full-size MIDI ports as well.
It's a classic. I think we could say that, couldn't we?
I think a definite classic. Yeah, even if I've got a couple of dead keys.
Maybe we should drop it again and see if they come back. No, don't do it live.
One of the features that people sometimes forget about though is, and this works in both sequencer and in ARP mode, is that if you hold the shift button, change a setting, like maybe change the time division, so long as you're holding shift down, it doesn't make the change until you release the shift.
Oh, really?
And then if you whack shift down, change it again. Yeah. So you can use that in extremely musical ways.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, really neat. Very easy to miss that one. So.
I'm sure. I remember Mylar Melodies. Alex, he did a really good kind of like, this is how to use it, and it's a great video if you check it out. He's got loads of views on it, because for a simple thing, it's actually got a lot of hidden features. It has. And do you know, one of the things I love so much, and the way that I use it though, is the shift and the MIDI channel change, in that it's just, there's no menu diving. It's so quick. So if you've got a bunch of things like I have at the back here, MIDI devices all connected, just being able to jump to them, route, and essentially route it somewhere else.
Yeah, super fast. I think that's one of the great things. And of course that shift, and you can change the gate length with shift, and also the amount of swing as well. And again, because you can do that in this kind of super fast way, it all adds to its performability. And another thing as well is that on the back here, you've got 3 CV outputs. You've got mod, gate, and pitch.
Yeah.
In the MIDI software, you can change that mod to be fed from the Aftertouch as well. So I think that's another thing
I didn't know. Gosh, I'm learning so much about this already. And I'm trying to think the last time. I haven't used it for a little while, because the last thing I reviewed was the Peak. And then before that, I can't remember what I reviewed before that. I've completely forgotten. It's gone. But there's more stuff coming soon.
Cool.
Okay, well, no, I'm glad we covered that, because it is kind of a big deal. It's always good to see that there's updates going on.
Yeah.
There was this other thing. Was this? Did you see that? Speaking of MIDI interfaces, did you see the MeBlip?
Nice.
Cubic Go, which is just a nice little, really simple MIDI in and out. One MIDI in and out, but with 4 throughs. So again, you could hook up many different things from the one box, and it's got a one I/O. But inside is a little processor that kind of makes sure that all of those, all of those ports are bang on in terms of latency. There's no discernible latency. It's got a little ARM processor in it.
Is that USB just for power, or is it so you can?
No, it's for USB. It's a USB class compliant. It's only $59.
It is class compliant,
and it's only $59 as well. And I'm not sure about this. I don't know if Peter Kern is involved in MeBlip, or he's just does their PR for it. I'm not entirely sure because
I think he's involved in the design. I think.
Ah, right. Good.
Or I mean, he's certainly. Yeah, I think a lot of the influence of what they do is from him. But I might be wrong about that. But he's certainly part of the. Yeah, I mean, I strongly associate that.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was going to mention it in the story, but I thought I'm not so sure about that. Maybe I should check. What else have we got?
I've been having lots of fun. Well, just on the MIDI thing. Just I've mentioned this many times. It's just I think it's one of the best little gadgets on the market. This is the RetroKit RK005, which is a USB host, but it's got tons of really interesting features. I like the fact it's a really excellent thing for plugging into your OP1 as an example. Like a little break. So into the, it hosts the OP1 essentially. So if you would like, if you'd like to have,
MIDI
IO on your OP1, then that's the way to go. But that's only like a fraction of what it can do. This it can play back MIDI files. So if you just plug in a USB card reader
like a thumb
into
drive
it,
or
yeah, and it'll automatically. So if you have like lots of if you have lots of cards with MIDI files on, and you just plug the card in there, and it'll start playing out the MIDI. Full 16 channels or whatever of so
you could use it as a player.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, so it's also got a little gate output on there, but I think that's configurable as well.
Is it web MIDI configurator?
Yeah.
Of course, that's actually reminding me. I got this guy, which was given to me, I think, last year's Super Booth, and that's
flip it around.
Yeah, I also have that.
Look at that.
It's personalised. Oh, wow, Music Personality of the Year. I didn't realise it said that. I just saw the logo. Guys, yes, I won Music Personality of the Year. I used to be somebody. Didn't get it last. I didn't get it last year.
2017.
Yeah, right.
No.
I'm old news now.
Old news. Yeah. Yeah. But I was mentioning that arcade, that thing again, because I think it's something that sometimes slips under the radar. But if you do have like a doorless kind of situation and you are looking for a problem solver, again, there's a lot of controller keyboards out there, like the Korg Nano Studio, for instance, that will work over Bluetooth, but it does have a micro USB on there. So just the fact that you can make your
how does it get power then? Does it need
you'd then use the there's a USB port on the front and the back. This one can be like a USB client or power, and then here this side is the host. But unlike some of the other things like the Kenton one, this one, if you plug in like a hub, you can have it will host loads of devices. I don't know quite how many, but
oh really?
You could
That's
have
useful.
Yeah. So you could have all your. In fact, I like doing this if I want to unburden, because I've got so many USB devices here. If I want to unburden my computer of USB, devices, you can just put it into the hub on here. So that sort of like takes away. So just
Presumably
have
that would need to be powered, would it, to get enough juice?
No, but I'd plug it into the computer. So plug it into the computer through the USB client.
Right. So then it just powers everything else.
Yeah. So it gets the power from the client, but also it will just appear as like, just as a single USB. Yeah, sorry, as a sort of your 16 channels, but you can then get at the. I can't remember now if you have to share just the 16 channels. I'm not sure. I'd have to check it out again. But anyway, sorry, I keep mentioning this thing because I thought that there was going to be tons more USB host stuff to come out, and hasn't.
Well, presumably writing kind of client drivers or writing class compliant drivers for something that is essentially held. I mean, because it's fixed in time, unless you can update the firmware, there must be other things that cause that. Yeah, I guess. So. But yeah, anyway, if you want to check out the Mi Blip, it's only, like I say, it's only $59, which is
is another one of the, maybe that and your and the Retro Kits arcade would be an excellent collection for both. That could work very well. What else do we have? Oh yeah, I had this. Did you see on Synth Anatomy? We had you could pimp your Korg MS-20 Mini with these overlays, which I just really like the idea of this stuff. So you can recolor the synth and make hidden, visible, especially on the patch bay, so you can label it up. I don't know what that, and you can just make it look really different. And I'm trying to think what there, $40 is quite expensive for an overlay kit, but I like the idea of this customization. I know people sort of tend to shy away a bit, particularly collectible. I suppose it depends on how expensive the kit is that you're going to customize, because it could be, you might think it ruins its provenance, and then you kind of, it's too personal.
A nice brighter interface though could really help if you're using it live though, because like I say, like the MS-20, very black surface. If it's if the lighting is less than ideal,
very grandmothery,
like that,
it's very mood grandmother.
I was going to say, they turn your MS-20 into a grandmother, or a great auntie, should we call it?
A great. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at this and see what it's. I think we make that bit. May as well have a look at the video. Oh, so you got to take the screws off, and then it's so it's not stickers. Oh my God, remove all the knobs. Oh Jesus.
Oh, big job.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, well I suppose that makes sense. You'd have to, really, wouldn't you? Let's have a look.
Oh, that's cool though.
I like the idea of that. Is it stick-on? So it is.
Looks like he's sticking it on, doesn't it?
Maybe it's magnetic.
Although I'd imagine all the knobs will hold it in place.
That does look cool.
It does.
I don't know. I think the MS-20 kind of got superseded by the. I think they should do more MS-20 desktops, because that was such a great synth. That's one thing I gelled with that really well, because it made the MS-20 make so much more sense to me as a synth, because it was always very limiting, even though the filters and whatnot made it, but the lack of PWM, which is not a big thing, but things like that and oscillator sync and a few other things besides, and the fact that also the routing was ever so slightly different, so you could actually control the two oscillators independently, which was much harder to do on the original, if not impossible, from what I remember. So yeah, it's a shame that that's one thing I wish I'd, because I built that kit and they sent it back, and I wish I'd kept hold of that, because it made a lovely sound and it definitely had a better vibe to it than.
What have you got though? You've got an old MS-20 though, haven't you?
I've got an original, yeah. I've got an original, yeah. I mean, it's all right, apart from I don't think I've got anything that will properly control it through voltage. I mean, because it's such a weird, it's S-trig and hertz volts, not volt per octave. So it's all, and the trigger is inverted, so the gate, it's all like wrong. Basically, everything's completely wrong. So you end up kind of like you stop a note by pressing the button rather than. Yeah.
One of the bands I saw at the weekend is Pigs. A band called that. It's often abbreviated to Pigs times 7. And the singer, he was using an MS-20, and it was a white one. And I was trying to remember, did they do a limited edition all white one? Or I wondered if he'd sort of painted it. Yeah, like an all white. It was all. So at first I was like, oh, what's that?
I think there was.
Yeah.
I think there was.
I had a feeling that there might have been.
MS-20 white version. Maybe, let me just have a look.
Yeah.
I think there was a limited edition kit white version.
But you see, that sounded great. I mean, they were really like a really heavy rock band. But the sound of the MS-20 when he was doing sort of burbles and splurples and that kind of thing, and it sounded great, alongside all the kind of mashed up guitars. It sort of had it kind of held its own. So it's a really ferocious sound you can get off that. It's a screaming sound.
Oh yeah, and I think the Mini, was it the Mini or the desktop kit? You could switch between the filter types, because there's a Type 1 and a Type 2 filter, from what I remember, and I'm sure there was some sort of boot firmware or boot sequence where you could flip between them, because one was more screamy and one was a bit creamier. Screamy or creamy? Oh, that's a possible title.
That's a title, isn't it?
Maybe not. Actually, thinking about it, it could be misconstrued.
It could be misconstrued. Yes.
So far, the titles are "Melodically Empty Stomach," which I quite like, Gaz. That was a good one. And "I Love Losing the One" was another great quote of yours. So those are possible.
I do.
So it's 2-1 in the titles. There, you've got two good ones, and I've got one that's slightly dubious and could be probably not such a good idea. But it's a PG title potentially. My God, it's 5 o'clock. We got it. We got there. Where was that? I think Pip the M's. I think we were close there. Oh, did you see that? Where was it? This band Bastille. That was quite funny. I mean, you can tell when things are getting when things are thin on the ground. You start looking on NME.com for stories. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, this was Bastille. I think there's a tweet down here somewhere. Where was it? They did a gig in Sweden somewhere, and that basically it just so on a theme park ride, like a massive kind of one of those terrifying drops. So he's got a radio mic and he's singing the lead vocal. Jesus. And he's got in-ears as well, so he's obviously got good. They've got good range on his radios.
It's different meaning for waiting for the drop, isn't it?
But that's always interesting. Is which kind of led to one of those? What's the weirdest place you've ever done a gig? I mean, that was more like a playback thing, or he might have gone up there while the band were playing somewhere. I don't know exactly how that worked, but I just thought that was it might have been a good conversation over. But it is 5 o'clock, so it's kind of like
God, yeah, weirdest place to gig. Gosh, I'd need to think about that one. I've definitely done some weird ones.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the weirdest place. One of the weirdest places I went to see a gig was at. It was in Aldborough at the Speed of Sound. I can't remember the name of the. It was like Aldborough Electronic Music Festival. It was one of the first events we covered for ages ago. We drove for 6 or 7 hours to get to Aldborough. It's right over on the east coast of the UK, and it was on an old US kind of post-war airbase. And the control bunker was this massive concrete structure with all of these sort of incredible deflector concrete screens. So, blast resistant effectively. So then it would just sort of dissipate any kind of blast. And also it could be near the planes. Planes could take off and it would thrust into them and it would be all right. And we did an interview with Modified Toy Orchestra. I think they were called Modified Toy. Yeah, I think they were called. And inside they did a gig inside the bunker, and the bunker was it was in the summer and it was insanely hot, and every room was just a concrete, just a windowless, because it's a bunker, a windowless, airless concrete room with really loud pinging music in it. That was kind of weird. I wasn't where I played, but that was kind of a weird one in terms of a gig.
I mean, I don't know if it's so much weird as kind of impressive, but I played a gig with Charlotte Church in the Pop Dungeon in Edinburgh's Natural History Museum, which was amazing. What a building. They only grant one music license every 5 years, so I felt ever so privileged to be able to play that gig. But a beautiful big glass, it's one of the most beautiful, certainly the most beautiful place I've ever played. I mean, absolutely dreadful for acoustics.
Yeah, awful sound. Yeah, 9-second bass drum reverb. Yeah, I'll bet.
But gosh, if you do go to Edinburgh, you must visit that place. So it is stunning. But there was just incredible things all around, around us as well. So that was great. But not a good sound. But wow, I don't know, but yeah, God, I've done so many weird gigs over the years. I'd have to have a good think about that one. I'm sure there's weirder places.
Oh, actually, I've got another one. I've got a story.
Oh,
yeah. I did a gig in Berlin in the 90s with a 10-piece like jazz funk outfit, sort of quite tight staccato, rhythmically complicated music, brass section, percussionist,
keyboard player, bass player, drummer, all of that kind of thing. And we rocked up, and it was the old abandoned central bus depot in Berlin, which is about the size of, I don't know, several enormous aircraft hangars all in one space with loads of. There was a space in the middle, but all surrounding it were all these kind of 1950s, 60s, 70s sort of derelict coaches from the Cold War era. I think it was in former East Berlin, and we showed up. And I thought, oh, this would be challenging, but it got even worse because the PA company rocked up and just left this pile of PA in the middle of the floor and said, "Off you go." And I had to build and tune the PA before I could sound check the band in a room where literally it was bass drum. It was just like it was like a bass drum into a freeze reverb but full bandwidth. I mean, it was just ghastly. The sound was almost impossible. In fact, what happened? We had a power cut, which was actually a bit of a godsend because then the band played acoustically and it was much better. I didn't know. Cool. Even well, apart from you could only hear drums. I think someone had an acoustic guitar, so it was all right. But that was the weirdest place I've played to. Most unsuitable.
I remember I played at Shunt in London, which was an amazing. It was in the London Underground, and it was kind of like this weird place. I think it was from Victorian era, the early days of the Underground, and it was like somewhere where they would store all the underground, all the tube, sort of the carriages and stuff. It was like, it was wonderful. It had like this kind of central sort of, and it was all totally dark. But then you'd have these like kind of tube like. Sort of like little avenues coming off the main drag, if you want to call it that, and things would be very dimly lit, and you could just wander through this big network of tunnels. Sadly, that closed down when we talked about the Shard earlier with that noise box, but when they built the Shard, the skyscraper in London, that was directly over this place, so it kind of closed it down. But that was an amazing place, actually, Shunt. And what was quite funny about Shunt was the way in was just an anonymous door which just opened into London Tower Bridge tube station. It was just an anonymous door, and you just got,
really?
You go through this door and into this big network of tunnels, and it was so cool. But yeah, sadly gone now. But,
as is so much property prices and all that. Actually, that was that place that we went to in Berlin with the
Sea-base?
Underground Sea Base.
Yeah.
Was it Sea Base?
Oh,
with
what
the
a
kind
place.
of, which was all decked out in kind of like kitsch 1960s, 1970s space internals. But there's a floor below, which was I didn't get to see that. That was a restricted area, but you got to have a look.
Yeah, restricted area. Yes, should not really say too much about it, given that it's a hacker space, but it is somewhere. If you are part of that hacker community, I'm sure you'll know about Seabase. But what a brilliant place! After show party there at Superbooth, but spent many an hour there. I think leaving there about 5 or 6 in the morning, and then be back at Superbooth for 10 o'clock.
I enjoyed that. I mean, we only went there once because the rest of the time I was so knackered, but that was a good fun. Looking forward to next Superbooth, of course. Hopefully that'll be good. Well, Gaz, I think we made it. I mean, we've actually surpassed our brief here. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes, definitely.
I'm just going to give you another view of my antique Synthsite T-shirt. If I find any more of those, I might we might do a giveaway or something. But I'll have to to see how valuable they all are. But yes, so that was Sonic Talk number 587. Don't forget, if you want to
587.
Want to enter the competition to win Isotopes. Oops, no, I have to do that and then that, don't I? Isotope Neutron 3 Advanced. Don't forget, we're looking for the hashtag 21st Century Mixes, where 21st is 21ST, as in 21st, the number representation of that. 21st Century Mixes and the hashtag Neutron 3 to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. And we'll pick a winner in the next show. And of course, next week's show is not going to be live. We've got the pre-recorded interview with Imogen Heap, which I thoroughly recommend. She's a great subject, a great interviewer. Yes, I think that's the right word. So thank you, Gaz, for joining us. It's been great fun as ever.
Thank you. Can I just give a couple of cinema tips and sort of warnings?
Oh yeah, go on then.
I went to see Midsummer. I think you can just catch it.
Oh, is that the horror? Is that the Swedish horror thing?
Folk horror.
Folk horror.
It's fantastic. It's really good. I mean, it's a bit.
How does it compare to The Wicker Man?
It's very, very favourably. If you like The Wicker Man, you're going to love it. Midsummer. It's brilliant. I loved it, and the soundtrack of that is amazing. But also, I think it was just probably the most beautiful film I've ever seen, actually, in terms of, I think it's all like 4K. It was really high quality. But gosh, whoa, what a film. But if you like your non-Hollywood style films, then I'd recommend it. It really is. It's a very good film. But the warning is, I just want to warn everybody off the stinking cesspit that is Yesterday, Danny Boyle's latest film. It is thoroughly disgraceful. Honestly, it's the worst film I've ever seen. I hated every minute of it. It's, oh God. I'm so pleased that I've got a platform where I can vent my spleen about that dreadful thing. Everyone associated with that film should be very ashamed of themselves. Oh dear. It truly is absolutely abysmal. Oh God, that was so nearly walked out. Just kind of just gritted my teeth and tried to get through it just in case. It was going to be.
Can I ask you, was that a common theme from people leaving the cinema, or did it just particularly affect you that way? So
there was hardly anyone there. Hardly anyone there, as is the case with virtually every film I go to see. Is cinemas are so generally empty these days. But no, there was a group of people who were
standing up and going, "What are you doing? This is dreadful."
What are you doing?
But it's a shame because Danny Boyle, as we know, he's like a bit of a creative. He's a creative powerhouse. So what happened? I
don't know. Because the premise of that film is like this idea that
what happens if the Beatles didn't exist? Yeah.
Yeah, he has like a bike, gets knocked off his bike by a bus or something, and then, when he comes to, the Beatles don't exist. He's somehow in it doesn't explain what that is, some parallel universe or whatever. But the amount of things they could have done with it, and oh God, it's just so awful. Really, the most vom-inducing film. Oh,
so that's your anti-tip.
So yes, anti-tip. Please don't go and see it. Don't go. And if anyone tells you it's good, they're either lying or very, very. I've got no taste. I'm very stupid. I'm sorry. It's a dreadful film. There's no. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks for letting us know that. I'm sure some people will be pleased to be warned off.
Yeah.
Now you're probably people are going to go and see it just to see it if it's really that bad, because that can do that as well, couldn't they? Gaz, thank you very much.
Not bad. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but you've had your rant set. You were going to say it again, weren't you?
I was just going to say, The Room, which is called the worst film ever, is brilliant to watch. This is like the worst film ever, but with no redeeming facts at all.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
all right,
sorry.
Fair days. Well,
Stretching my rant.
Thank you for watching this week. We'll see you not next week. Remember, there's going to be a show, be a pre-recorded show next week, but the week after we'll be back. See you later. Bye-bye now.